I wonder then, but just before we hand over, if I can ask you one other question about your talk. Who do you think your talk's going to be most useful to?
Yeah, thanks. Well, I suppose I'm very conscious that our people's time is precious, and that in the marketplace of ideas, the marketplace of worldviews, there's a lot that's on offer to us. There's a lot that's being sold to us. So I'd love to spend a bit of time, if I can, thinking about, I suppose, what the Bible says Christianity has to offer individuals. So I suppose I'm hoping it will be useful for anyone who's particularly looking into the Christian faith and wants to know, what it has to offer them.
Yeah, thank you. Nick, I think you'd like me to read the passage today, which is straight out of the Bible. I'm going to put it in the chat. It's from John chapter 1, verses 14 to 18, and then we're in your hands.
Great.
Let me pray. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. John testified concerning him. He cried out, saying, "This is the one I spoke about when I said, 'He who comes after me has surpassed me, because he was before me.' Out of his fullness we have all received grace in place of grace already given. For the law was given through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God, but the one and only Son, who is himself God and is in closest relationship with the Father, has made him known."
Brilliant. Thanks, Jimmy. Thanks very much. A friend of mine grew up on a farm just outside of Cambridge. And I remember he told me that one day he walked into the kitchen and he saw in the kitchen a businessman sitting across the table from his father. And the businessman was making his father an offer. It was an offer to buy shares in a small but rapidly expanding company with huge projections for the future. And the offer was to buy some shares for not that much, like a few £1,000s. You could buy some shares in this company. And his father thought about the offer and said a firm no, they weren't interested. They had enough going on the farm. It turned out that the businessman worked for a company called Sky. And if they had taken the offer, then within 5 years they would have been millionaires as a family. My friend tells me that still to this day, every time he sees his dad, he tells him directly that he's never forgiven him for passing up on that offer. A remarkable offer. But what does what does faith have to offer? What does faith, the Christian faith particularly, have to offer business people in and around Mayfair? Well, I think there are two things particularly to pick up on. They're both there at the end of verse 14 in that passage that we had read. Look at the end of that verse, that Jesus came full of grace and truth. Grace and truth. Two things I think that are lacking in our society. But more than that, two things I think that each of us personally need. Truth that can be known and grace that can be received. We're just going to look at each of those in turn. So first of all, truth that can be known. If you look down at verse 14 with me again, you see that the claim in that verse is that first Christmas that God came to the world in Jesus to offer us truth that we can know. Now, I don't know what you think of that idea of truth. A few years ago, we were declared, weren't we, to be a post-truth society. I wonder what you made of all that. It strikes me that when it comes to this idea of truth, we are in a bit of a muddle as a society. On one hand, we're nervous, aren't we, of anybody who claims to have the truth. We know, as Foucault pointed out, that claiming to have the truth that other people believe can just be a power grab. So often it can be used to belittle and to other people that don't agree. So we're rightly nervous of truth claims on one hand, but on the other hand, it feels like we're realizing increasingly that truth does still really matter, that we as a society we can't just do away with the concept of truth. I came across this, I'm going to try and share my screen. I came across this cartoon the other day that begins to illustrate, I think, the frustration of people acting like truth doesn't matter. I'm sorry, Janine, your answer was correct, but Kevin shouted his incorrect answer over yours, so he gets the point. It feels like people are increasingly fed up of people acting like truth doesn't matter. We're fed up, aren't we, of politicians being able to lie publicly with no repercussions because truth matters. We're fed up of news feeds with fake news. I don't know if you saw, there was a documentary massively popular around Christmas time called The Social Dilemma. Did anybody see that? It was pointing out how news feeds deliberately display stories that of polarized opinions in order to gain more of our attention. And this documentary was people within the industry that are fed up of it, because what it's doing is it's genuinely affecting the way that other people see the world and think of others' opinions, and it's demonstrably fueling hatreds. We're fed up because truth does matter. This is a very extreme example, but I wonder if you heard of the example of Edgar Welch. Did you hear of this? This is a guy who was a father of two from Carolina in the US. Apparently his pastimes used to include playing Pictionary with his family. He came across a series of fake news reports on the internet, and he went down this kind of spiral about a child abuse ring operating out of a pizzeria in Washington. And he got so worked up about it that he jumped in his car, drove hundreds of miles, kicked down the door of this restaurant with an AR-15 assault rifle and opened fire. He burst through the back of the restaurant to try and get into the basement where this supposed ring was, to find nothing but pizza supplies. I mean, wonderfully, no one was hurt. But it's horrible, isn't it? It's terrible, because truth does matter. Lies hurt, and truth does matter for a society. But I suppose, behind all of that kind of truth at the level of its importance for society, behind all of that, truth does matter, I suppose, for each one of us individually as well, because we each find ourselves in those quiet moments, when the laptop's shut and when the phone is off. We each find ourselves asking those deeper questions at times, don't we? Am I living a life that really matters? Is there more to life than this? What is my purpose? We can't get away from questions like that, because, as Cicero put it, man is in his very nature a truth-seeking being. We long for truth. We thirst for truth. We thirst for meaning. If you look at verse 14 again, the claim here is that Jesus comes to us full of truth. Truth about meaning, truth about purpose, truth about God. If you glance at verse 18, no one has ever seen God, but the one and only Son, who is himself God and is in the closest relationship with the Father, has made him known. The claim here is that there is a truth that stands behind the universe, and it wants to reveal itself to you and I. God wants to be known by you and I. And one of the things I love about the Christian faith is this idea that the truth comes to us not in a dogma, not in a list of rules, kind of static and dusty, but the truth comes to us in a person. It comes to us in Jesus Christ. It's as if the truth kind of reaches out its hand to you and I, a truth that you can know, truth that you can relate to, truth that you can rely on, that you can lean on, and that you can build your life upon. Truth that you can know is the first thing that Christian faith, I think, has to offer to people. Now, for anyone who's sort of still nervous of that idea that any claim of truth is just a power claim, I suppose an important question for any worldview is, how does it lead me to treat those with whom I disagree? How does it lead me to treat those with whom I disagree? And I suppose if you look at the truth in Jesus, well, what do you see there? I suppose you see someone who tells you to love your enemies. You see someone who tells you to spend your life serving others, to pray for people that persecute you. I mean, it's a man who literally died praying for the people that were murdering him. Because Jesus isn't just, in the Christian faith, he's not just full of truth, but he's also full of grace. And that brings us to our second point, the second thing that Christianity is offering according to these verses: grace that can be received. You'll see it there at the end of verse 14, that he is full of grace. Verse 16, out of his fullness, we've received grace in place of grace already given. Grace, what is grace? Well, grace basically means undeserved kindness. I was trying to think of how to illustrate this. I remember a moment about 10 years ago. I was in the car driving to a holiday in France. We'd been driving through the night. I was in the driver's seat. My parents were in the car. My wife, now fiance at the time, was sitting behind me. And I was in a foul mood. I was feeling really spiky. I was being rude to people. I was being unpleasant. And I remember my wife now just lent her arm through and just squeezed me on the shoulder. It wasn't a rebuking squeeze. It was just to say, it's okay. I love you. It's all right. And I so did not deserve that little moment of kindness that it really changed my mood. It really transformed my mood. It kind of melted my heart in that moment. A tiny little picture there, grace, undeserved kindness, the kind of kindness that changes you, that softens you, and helps you to be better. Grace. Now, it strikes me that idea, undeserved kindness, that is something that is, again, lacking in our society at the moment. Before lockdown, I went for a lunch with a friend of mine, an old school friend who works in marketing. And he told me that we were eating lunch outside. He told me that he can't eat lunch in his office anymore. And I said, well, why is that? Did something happen? And he said, well, there's this group of younger employees, and they're very sensitive. And they're very strident. And a number of times in the past, they've taken offense at something that somebody else has said. And they've gone straight to social media and they've kicked up such a storm that the person has ended up losing their job. And my friend said the strange thing about it was that the perpetrators were immediately repentant. They were immediately sorry and expressed a desire to want to learn and to change. But there was no grace for them. There was just shame and rejection and a sacking. And he said, look, it's got to the point now that I'm so scared that I'll slip up, that I can't eat in the office. I have to eat my lunch alone outside of the office. There's very, very little grace around us at the moment. What one social commentator put it this way. One social commentator wrote, since everybody errs in their lifetime, there must be in any healthy person and society the ability to forgive. Today, we seem to live in a world where guilt and shame are more at hand than ever, and we have no means of redemption. Grace. Now, again, like truth, grace is something that our society is lacking, but it's also, I think it's a deeply personal need as well. I venture to say for each one of us. I mean, if you will, just, I suppose, consider yourself for a moment. I mean, of course, there's much in our lives that is good. There's much that we're proud of. But that's not the whole picture, is it? I mean, we don't tend to like looking at our darker side, but I suppose each one of us will be personally conscious of aspects of our lives and events from our past and parts of our character, sides of our character, of which we are profoundly ashamed. And if there is a God in front of whom you and I will one day stand and give an account, then that is a problem. But Jesus comes to us to offer grace. He comes full of grace. And if you look at verse 16 again, you spot there that it is grace that can be received. At the heart of the Christian faith is this idea that Jesus came, yes, to show us truth, but also to die on a cross, to bear our shame, to bear our guilt, so that we can be reconciled to God, so that we can know his love, know his grace, experience that at the deepest level of our being. One author put it this way. He said, we're not promised it will be as if our bad stuff never happened. So the story of your life will still be the story of your life with all the kinks and twists that you gave it. God won't take those away, or your life wouldn't be your life. But he can take from us the guilt and the fear, so that we can start again free in hope. so that we're freed to try again and fail again better. He can overwhelm our propensity to screw up with his grace. Grace is the forgiveness that we can't earn. It's the father weeping at the roadside. It's the tragedy accepted with open arms and somehow turned to good. It's what Jesus' death achieved. So I suppose that's the offer to you and I in the Christian faith. Truth that can be known, and grace that can be received. And notice that the verse 14, Jesus is full of it. You can drink of it. You can plunge yourself into this grace and never find the bottom of it. And after countless Christians through the millennia have drunk from this stream, it's just as overflowing as ever. God is offering us truth that can be known and grace that can be received. Now, I know that in one sort of 20-minute talk, I'm not going to convince people, but I would love to invite people to consider these things further. There's various ways you could do that. These talks are happening online every week. You'd be more than welcome to join us at Christchurch Mayfair on a Sunday, either in person or check out our YouTube channel with live streaming services every week. But beyond that, if you'd like to investigate, we can offer to find someone to meet up to open the Bible with you one-to-one, so you can investigate these things kind of firsthand for yourself. So I'd love to invite you to investigate this offer further. If you want to know more about that, Jimmy's going to put his email in the chat. So please do check that out and follow that up if you'd like to investigate these things further. But those are the two things I think that the Christian faith has to offer: truth that can be known in a unique way, and grace that can be received. Thank you so much, Jimmy. That's all I've got for now.
Thanks so much.